Body piercing jewelry basics. This is episode number 11. We're going to go through what gauge most Vulva piercings are done at. Coming up next on Body Piercing Basics, episode number 153. For those that are new to the channel, welcome to the Body Piercing and Tattooing channel. Hope you're enjoying the videos. Hope you find them helpful and useful, but you may not know who I am. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio located right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside the Skin Kitchen Tattoo. Before we get too far into this, a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about genitalia piercings. If you are not of an appropriate age or you're easily offended or don't want to learn a thing about that, this is not the video for you. There are plenty of videos on our channel that do cover other subjects that have nothing to do with genital piercings. If you are looking for something that's going to be tantalizing or sexually exciting or what have you, you're going to be sadly disappointed. This video is solely for the purpose of education and nothing else. First, before we get into the meat of it, it's a good idea to talk to your piercer about what gauge to start out at. Some questions you should ask or consider is what type of jewelry do you plan on wearing in this piercing and the availability of that particular type of jewelry. If it's one of those pieces that's going to need to be a little thinner or a little thicker, talk to your piercer about that and see what what's available for your end goal. The other thing is if you plan on stretching this piercing. In some cases, it's actually a better idea to start at a larger gauge than it is a thinner gauge and then stretch up. There's some piercings that it's a better idea to start at a thinner gauge and then work up. Some of these piercings kind of stretch on their own, so in some cases it might be better to start with a thinner piece of jewelry to give you more time to kind of adapt, quick, faster healing time, etc. The last thing is, do you have a lot of medical procedures in your future? If you do so, they're probably going to more than likely make you remove every metallic piece of jewelry that you have, regardless of how certified it is, or even if you bring in the mill certificates. So you're probably going to need an alternative such as glass. If your piercer stocks glass jewelry, which hopefully they do, it's a good idea to talk to them about this before you do the piercing to see what's available as far as glass jewelry that they stock, or if this is going to be something that you need to plan ahead and order stuff for. So let's get into the meat of it, so to speak. Starting with the Christina piercing. These are done at 14 or 12 gauge. Then we move down to the vertical clitoral hood piercing. This piercing is usually done at 14 gauge. It can be done at 12 gauge if you wish. Horizontal clitoral hood piercing, almost done entirely at 14 gauge, but it can be done at 12 gauge. Princess Diana piercing. This is a vertical clitoral hood piercing that's done at a slight angle or off to the side. It's basically a vertical clitoral hood. Gauge sizes are pretty much the same, 14 to 12 gauge. Labia minoras, done at 12 gauge or larger. This piercing can kind of stretch on its own. Weight can be a factor with this particular piercing during the healing process and afterwards because it can kind of thin out the tissue. So starting at a thinner gauge might be a better option, but 12 gauge has enough resistance that it doesn't usually tear, and that's a factor with that particular piercing. Labia majoras. These are usually done much like the minoras at 12 gauge or larger. They can stretch on their own also, and they can thin out that tissue. So weight is always a factor. Triangle piercings. Triangle piercings are usually done at 12 gauge or larger. They can be done at 14. I prefer 12 gauge, to be honest with you. I think it gives a little bit more security and less traumatic problems. Now let's move on to some piercings that either I don't do or are extremely, extremely rare and take a level of expertise that a lot of people in the industry do not have. Starting with Forchetta. This one, I just never trained to do it and don't consider it, or never considered doing it. Basically, it goes through the perineum at the bottom of the vaginal opening. It seems like it gets in the way. It's a very anatomy-specific piercing, and if you plan on getting pregnant and having children, could cause issues. That one should be done at 12 gauge or larger. Clitoris piercings. This is actually a horizontal piercing of the clitoris. This is done at 14 gauge or larger. I don't know how to stress how important it is to find somebody that knows what they are doing and has a lot of experience doing that particular piercing. And anatomy is a huge part of it. Isabella Piercings. This is a vertical version of the clitoris piercing. Really need, like I said, you need somebody that knows what they're doing. 14 gauge or larger. I guess I should mention this. I have seen clitoral hood or clitoris piercings done at 16 gauge in the past. I really would leave that up to the discretion of your piercer. My fear is that something that thin would possibly tear if caught. Princess Albertina. This is a piercing. It's kind of the Prince Albert version for a vulva. This is done through the urethra downward into the vaginal opening. Once again, when you need to find somebody that knows exactly what they're doing, and I wouldn't suggest doing this any thinner than 14 gauge to possibly 12 gauge or larger. And the last one, Neeri Piercing. This one is basically a combination piercing. It's a vertical clitoral hood combined with a Christina piercing. It's a very long piercing. Will probably take a very long time to heal. And you really need somebody that knows what they are doing. 14 gauge or larger would be the option on this particular piercing. Do you have any of these piercings? What was your experience? What gauge were you pierced at? Leave a comment. Till next time, here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you in that next video.